Namaste, Katya.
Namaste, Dr Kausthub Desikachar. Hello, and greetings and hugs to Chennai, to India, and greetings and hugs to all the friends that are watching us. So let's check first if everything is okay technically, if you can just say hi or squeeze like or heart or smile or whatever emoji you prefer now today would be nice just to see if you can hear us, you see us. Erika, hi, hello, thank you very much. Our technical director Erika said everything is okay. Hello Aurelie. So Kaustubha, it's long time. It feels like long time we didn't do an interview, but it's actually less than a month. But nevertheless, for me, it's quite. It feels a long time. How do you feel, Kaustubha?
Well, you're basically putting me on the spot because it's my fault because I got too busy last month. So you are blaming me for this delayed. But yes, it's been about a month, and uh, I'm actually very happy that we are resuming and on a very auspicious kind of moment like now, where we are having the Easter coming. So it's a very auspicious moment. So hopefully we will have a good group of people coming together because it's holiday time for many people. So maybe it's a nice way to return back to these conversations. Hopefully we will have more of them in the future.
Yes, of course, but it's always very, very exciting. We are all waiting for this interview. So thank you nevertheless to take time for being with us, and thank you for all the friends that join us and will listen now and later on. So for all the people that are new here today, I want to introduce Dr. Kausthub Desikachar. He is a yoga teacher, yoga therapist, spiritual mentor, and he works all over the world and has many, many students and followers, and trying to help, as far as I know you, Kaustubha, people to heal not just from physical pain, emotional pain, but also on spiritual level. And today is the special interview that I will help to conduct. And my name is Katja Ujcic. I am a therapist for gifted people, expressive art therapist, a coach, and I'm helping people to go from grounding and up to reach to the stars. So today's interview is following my words to the stars is about enlightenment. It's a difficult word, a difficult subject, demanding subject also, but we will try uh, to make it as much as simple, maybe a little bit also entertainment as usually we are also fulfilling that part. So enlightenment, the light from the shadows. So on these special days ahead that are coming now, the Easter times, when Christian people celebrate Jesus Christ's resurrection, Jesus was, before the resurrection, he was betrayed, he was tortured, he was crucified, and then he resurrected from that and went to heaven. So in that times, with such an intense, let's say, historical background, these times are perfect for some deep self-reflections and some spiritual practices. So following that, I would really want our Dr. Kaustubha Desikachar to chant a fantastic chant for us to start this interview.
Thank you, Katya. We will begin with a chant. It is from one of the very old Upanishad that is called Taittiriya Upanishad, and it is one part of the second chapter, and it's very pertinent to our topic as well. ब्रह्मविदाप्नोति परम् तदेशाभ्युक्ता सत्यं ज्ञानमनन्तं ब्रह्मा यो वेद निहितं गुहायां परमे व्योमन् सोऽश्नुते सर्वान् कामान् सः ब्रह्मणा विपश्चितेति तस्माद्वा एतस्मादात्मन आकाशः सम्भूतः आकाशाद्वायुः वायोरग्निः अग्निरापः अद्भ्यः पृथिवी पृथिव्या ओषधयः ओषधेभ्यो अन्नम् अन्नात् पुरुषः स वा एष पुरुषो नरसमयः तस्येदमेव शिरः अयं दक्षिणपक्षः अयमुत्तरपक्षः अयमात्मा इदं पुच्छं प्रतिष्ठा तदप्येष श्लोको भवति शांति शांति शांति। Namaste, my dear friends.
Namaste. Thank you very much. So let's check who is here with us on that day. So we already welcomed Erika, Aurelie. Shri is here with us. Hello, Carrie, Lenka. Hello, Lenka. Valerie, dear friend from France, and Nortje from Netherlands. Hello. Zoe. We have Zoe from England. Kasturi. Hello. Rebecca. Hi. Sirisha. Hello, Sirisha. Yes. Sirisha or Sirisha, yes. So on these days to come,
Sirisha
the Christian will...
Sirisha is the master of Siri. The Apple secretary is called Siri. Isha means the master. So Sirisha should be the master of the Siri, you know,
Great.
the Apple assistant.
Great. So fantastic. So on these days to come, the Christian will celebrate and remember the Christ's pain first, his death, and how he rose from the dead. So we are celebrating miracle that was accompanied with betrayal, with torture, with shaming, with pain. Why is this story and similar stories so important and so intense?
Namaste, Katya. You have always the amazing capacity to ask very, very difficult question, especially the first one. So,
My specialty.
I want to do what is called what is it called? A confession. I'm not really an expert in Christian philosophy, so I'm not so sure about all these intricacies of Jesus Christ and his stories and what it means. I'm not an expert in this, so I don't know if I will be the best person to ask all these questions, especially because in our view, in the Vedic tradition that I come from, the concept of somebody attaining enlightenment indicates that somebody was in darkness first, was a human who had darkness, who achieved enlightenment. So that's why we say the Buddha became enlightened, because Buddha was a normal guy. He was a king's son, he was a prince. I mean, which is not normal, but he was a human, which is normal. He was never a god. Gods don't get enlightened in our tradition in the way we believe, because gods represent enlightenment. They are not becoming enlightenment because they are by nature enlightened. So I this is something that you have to clarify more, because uh, from my limited understanding, um, Jesus is a God, and which means Jesus was born enlightened and not somebody who is a human. This is my understanding. I don't know. I've not studied the texts of Catholicism or Christianity in depth. So that's the confession I have to make. This is my assumption. But the stories circling are symbolic of not just Jesus's life, but everybody's life. For example, be it the Jesus or be it the Buddha, they all suffered before they became so-called enlightened beings. The suffering is not what do you call specific to some people and not others. And this is something that we as modern day seekers must remember, which is that the concept of enlightenment does not mean an absence of suffering or an absence of challenges in life.
Yes.
This is the big lesson. And I feel that's the metaphor that these stories are being shared. Perhaps Jesus wanted us to know that even he could be betrayed. So, what about normal beings like you and me? Even he was tortured on a cross, crucified on a cross, which must have been very painful, literally. And that's similar to most of us. We go through suffering. So, enlightenment is not reserved for those who don't suffer. In many times, actually, we feel that many people are searching for a boring, non suffering, non controversial life, which basically means they will just be like a vegetable. I don't think enlightenment is possible without first going through a hell a lot of suffering and learning from that suffering. So in a way, what I believe is that without suffering, without challenges, there is no enlightenment that is possible. If we live a complacent life, if we live a life only in our comfort zone, everything is safe, 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 we are never going to be uh, an enlightened being. We will just be ignorant all our life. And that's why I don't know if this is controversial, but suffering is essential for us to be on the path of enlightenment. So, if I believe in this, and I'm actually very happy because I'm only in my 40s, but I've endured so many sufferings, which I actually feel very happy about because I know that I'm on the right track toward enlightenment, even if I'm not yet there. I'm not enlightened, certainly. I am not at all enlightened, but at least I'm on the right track rather than those who are on the other track searching for a non suffering life. Enlightenment does not mean an absence of suffering or an absence of challenges. It just means that we are not affected by them the same way. So it's, I think, to teach us this, that we have stories like that around Jesus, around Buddha, and around all the other beings who have been enlightened. And that's why the Buddha is called Buddha, because in Sanskrit, the word enlightenment is actually coming from the word bodhana. Bodhana means to wake up, to wake up. We are all sleeping from the reality, and we just need to wake up. We are asleep, we are numb to realities. And that's why today I chanted what I chanted, because, in a way, for me, enlightenment is to realize the divine that is in ourselves, not in a religious form of this God in this religion or that God in that religion, but to realize that divine that is in each of us, to awaken to that reality. And it doesn't have to have a form, because Buddhism doesn't have a form. Buddha doesn't consider himself to be a God, only a realized person. So that's why this chant I did was so important, because in this Upanishad we say that the divine is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. The divine is the reality, the truth. So if you are close to the truth, you are close to the divine. If you are aware of the truth, you are close to the divine. Jnanam, wisdom, not information, but wisdom, awareness. It's different from information. Today we all have information, we don't have awareness. In the old days, my grandfather's generation and before that, they had very little information, but they had a lot of awareness. No, they had no Google, they had no encyclopedia, nothing. But they had a lot of awareness. Even the people in the forest, they had a lot of awareness. Anantam, not to be limited by boundaries. We put so many boundaries in today's society. It's all identification, and identifications are always divisive. First, we have country identification. This is this country, this is that country. Then there is a war. Then we have gender identity. There is a war. Then we have religious identity. There is a war. Then we have identity of vegan and vegetarian and what type of food you are eating. There is a war. All kinds of identification or ego, which is a boundary, is only dividing. Whereas when we transcend the boundary, there is the infinite. We become fluid, infinite. So when we are having Satyam Jnanam Anantam, then we become enlightened. That's what people like the Buddha did. That's what people like Jesus perhaps had. That's what Krishna had, because Krishna is a God. He is not becoming enlightenment. He is the enlightened God. He's not somebody who had to come from darkness to light, brightness. That's for us humans. So, but humans have the chance when they are able to realize the divine in each of us through these attributes. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Then there is only expansion, there's no contraction. Energy will always expand. When we are enlightened, it will never contract.
Okay, great. Yes. Yeah, thank you. So, just as you mentioned before, let's say for this interview and for this discussion today, let's say that Jesus was a normal human being because he was bounded in this earth, but he came as an avatar, let's say, because he was special from the birth. Yeah. So if someone has any other suggestion about him, you can write in post. We can check. Yeah. But in order for us to have the same, let's say, meaning about him and the same feeling about him, for this interview, we are going to say like that. I think this is a very good point. Yeah. So with all this shaming and pain and crucifixion, as Jesus went through his life, and that we go also through all this suffering, then is like this promise in the end in these stories. Yeah, a gift and in the end, when we die, is then like some sort of promise, a gift, this enlightenment.
I have a very different way to understand this, because I don't feel that the death that comes after enlightenment, or the enlightenment that comes after death, depending on the tradition you believe in, is actually the end. Because the moment we achieve this concept of enlightenment, there's a term that Hatha Yoga Pradipika uses. We become what is called Kecharis. We become a Kecharin. Kechari is a concept. The one who is able to do the Kechari is the Kecharin. K-chari. Ka represents space, and space always is bound to time as well. And death is considered as time. When we say somebody dies, we say, oh, his or her time on this earth is over. But why do we assume that it's only earth that is part of the whole universe? For me, the death is an opening of a door to another world, where perhaps time and space take another meaning. And especially if we are enlightened, we get that so-called visa or a residence permit to reside together with the divine. And when we are together with the divine, there is no space, there is no time. It's not a boundary, it's infinite. So it's not an end, it's just another beginning. Whereas if we are not enlightened, then perhaps we are repeating that cycle one more time. Given another chance, we are repeating that cycle one more time. We are repeating this cycle one more time. And perhaps since we are all born here in this earth, it's maybe that we are not yet enlightened from the previous generation, that we had to take incarnation one more time. And there's a theory that is there for exceptional people, like you were saying about Jesus as a man and things like that. In Vedic science, we are also believing that certain times the God does take an avatar as a normal human, like Rama, for example, in our tradition, to somehow teach the people, to be an example to the people, so that people don't feel alone. So that people don't feel alone in their journey. That even Rama had to suffer, that even Jesus had to suffer, even the Buddha had to suffer, which is soothing for the human, which says, okay, you know what, I'm not lonely. Suffering is not a lonely path. And that we learn from that suffering, and that's the path to enlightenment. Enlightenment is not something that comes easy, that there is a pill.
Yes.
Enlightenment is actually looking at our darkest shadows and finding light in that. It's not avoiding our dark shadows. It's actually looking into the deepest and darkest of shadows, which is not a comfortable journey at all.
At all, yes.
It's not.
Not.
It's one of the reasons why there are so few of us in this world, in time and history, who are actually enlightened, because to look at our deep darkness is not a comfortable situation. And that's why I told you, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. The heart is holding the divine. And we don't live in the heart to be enlightened. We move away from the heart because when we are in the heart, when we are close to the divine and function from there, we can lie. Because Satyam is an attribute of the divine. So if you are there, you will have to tell the truth. But we don't
Yes,
want to tell the truth. We don't want to look at the truth. And that is why we suffer.
exactly. Yeah. Because we think that if we tell the truth, that we will be even more maybe shamed or have similar,
It's,
energies that
it's,
are.
it's the boundary that I talked about, the ego, the boundary of the ego. And that is
Yes.
why we are shamed. Like
Yeah.
body shamed, for example, if people are fat or they are body shamed. Now there are many vegans who go to normal supermarkets or restaurants and scream at the people that they should be ashamed about if they are doing this or doing that. There's a lot of people who are shaming people for the color of their skin. Uh, so we have all these egoistic identifications, and we are shamed, and we have to transcend that. So if you don't get shamed, then they don't have the power to influence you to build that ego more and more strongly.
Hmm.
That's the most important thing. We must not allow other people to shame us just because of some reason.
It so fascinates me that, nevertheless, these are sort of, let's say, concepts, yeah, and that we are talking, that we know they are the facts, but still, concepts, yes, but nevertheless we can literally feel it every day in our body energetically as a very, very big pain, yeah. So it's so interesting how this works in subconscious, yeah. So, do you also have, let's say, in India, going back to Easter, in Indian culture, similar stories of, let's say, if we say, Jesus was an avatar, but still attached to the earth, yeah, as a human, normal human being. Do you also have in Indian culture, any similar stories that normal people went to heaven?
Of course, there are. Heaven is not an empty place. It's full of fantastic people, and there is a word for that. The people who are in heaven, they are called Nitya Suri. It's a very fascinating word because the word Sura means light.
Mm-hmm,
So that's why we call the sun Surya, the one who has
mm-hmm,
light and
mm-hmm.
the one who moves. Because sun is always moving, right? He's
Uh-huh.
moving. Sun is
Yeah.
full of light and is moving. So he's called Surya. So
Mm-hmm.
Sura means light. So a person who has light is called a Suri. Just like yoga and yogi, one who is achieved yoga is a yogi. The one who has achieved light is a Suri. Nitya Suri means those who are eternally with light. Those are the enlightened ones.
Mm-hmm.
So, heaven is full of all these enlightened beings. Patanjali is one of them.
Great. We are looking
Patanjali
forward.
is considered one of the Nitya Suris. There are many of the Nitya Suris, and there are many people in the heaven. There is no fights between the Jesus and the Buddha and the Patanjali or
Yes.
the Shiva or the Ganesha. They're all happily sitting together and watching our dramas that are being played in the earth. But they are not fighting at all because they've transcended that boundaries.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
why they are
Yes.
called Nitya Suri, the one who is eternally shining with light. And so there's a lot of people, and Nitya Suris are not just humans. Nitya Suris are animals, plants, humans, etc. And this is the funniest argument that the so called vegans argue, that plants are not sentient beings. Of course, they are sentient beings because they have a sensory system that they can respond to because there is a presence of consciousness. In heaven, there is plants like parijata, lotus, and other plants which are there, which are with the gods because they have attained enlightenment. There are animals like Airavata, Gajendra, so many animals that are present in the heavens. There are so many humans, male and female. So the concept of enlightenment is not unique to a certain group of male people from this earth. It's heaven is full of all kinds of beings. There is dogs in the heaven. There's a
Good.
fantastic story in the Mahabharata where finally Yudhishthira is being invited to go to heaven. But they were walking along the Himalayas to the top, and Yudhishthira was finally at the top. A dog had been following them from the base of the Himalayas all the way to the top. So when Yudhishthira is invited to the heaven, Yudhishthira asked the dog to also enter the chariot, and the heaven gatekeeper say, "No, no, the invitation is only for you, sir, not for the dog." And Yudhishthira says, "If the dog has no place in heaven, if this dog doesn't have no place in heaven, I don't have any place in the heaven." So the gods say, "Okay, please invite the dog as well." So there are dogs and cats and animals, everything, plants, trees that are in heaven. Heaven is not just reserved for, some human beings.
Good. We are
Actually,
looking forward.
those who think that heaven is only reserved for some human beings will probably never be in heaven.
Okay. So why is yeah?
That's a boundary, no, that we have not crossed. That we are so great at because we are human.
Yeah. So why is arising from that so fascinating? And could be that the story, it's in a way, the story of Jesus is just in a way symbolical, that it was maybe just some certain part of his consciousness that died.
I don't think that it's only symbolical. I don't think it's only symbolical, but
Yes,
it could also be symbolical because, again, as I said, I'm not an expert in the Christian doctrine, so I don't want to comment whether the resurrection of Jesus was just symbolic. It
yes,
probably was true as well. We don't know. I don't know, at least.
we don't know, yeah, but
But it could also be symbolical because in the Vedic tradition, when we talk about that we have to die to be enlightened, it's the death of the ego.
mm,
We are identifying ourselves with the false identification, which is the identity of an ego. So that ego has to die. That ego has to die for awakening. Otherwise, we are only going to be identifying ourselves within the confines of the ego. Ego is, let's look at it this way, ego is like a wall around us and above and below us. Now, let's say you are stuck in this room. All you know is what the wallpaper is showing you.
yes.
But the world exists outside of this wallpaper, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you collapse this wall, then you see what's outside. You don't get confined defined by these four walls that surround you. So we think, each of us, we think of ourselves as, a man, an Indian, a Slovenian, or European, etc., which are all boundaries, which are all boundaries. Whereas the reality is that there is obviously something beyond that boundary, which is knowing, which is enlightenment. And we do not One thing is, we are not all prepared for enlightenment because the
Yes.
sensory and information, the awareness overload
Yeah.
will be so strong that we cannot take it. And this is where somebody has asked a question,
Mm-hmm.
how to get enlightenment and things like that. You cannot get enlightenment. It may happen.
Yeah. Exactly.
But why we are doing all the practices of asana and pranayama and other things like mudra and bandhas and other things like that in yoga is because we are preparing this sensory body to become strong enough to take all that information, all that knowledge and awareness that will happen when we are going to experience that enlightenment. A weak body will not be able to handle that. That's why when you look, Buddha did practices to make himself very strong. Jesus was a carpenter, which requires a lot of physical effort. In modern times, he would be called a handyman. He was fixing everybody's household things. So he was tough guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a weak individual. So it's very important that we are able to take this, because the moment you remove these boundaries, you hear everything, you see everything, you smell everything, or
Yeah.
rather, let's say you hear more than what you are used to, you are
Yeah.
smelling more than what you're used to in the beginning, and then suddenly it becomes infinite. And that's
Yeah.
why we need to have some great toughness in ourselves. And that's why it's not easy for everybody. We need to be very, very disciplined, focused, and strong.
Yes, but strong also not just physically, but also, let's say, emotionally,
And
mentally,
spiritually strong.
spiritually strong. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So that you are aware of the process and of the shadows that are jumping out.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and the spiritual strength is defined only by one word, Shraddha.
Yes.
There's no other way. Faith
Yeah.
is conviction. Faith. Shraddha is the only way.
So let's say in this research today, yeah, about Jesus and enlightenment, we could presume somehow probably that Jesus got enlightened when he resurrect from that,
I
or
don't.
maybe it was
It's very hard for me to say this about Jesus because I'm not a Christian scholar or an expert,
yeah.
and I don't want to even assume that Jesus got enlightenment after his resurrection, because I think he was enlightened even before. There are so many beautiful stories
Yes.
of Jesus as a 12-year-old, 11-year-old boy discussing with the priests in the Solomon's temple. So I don't know if Jesus got enlightened or he was born enlightened. He represented enlightenment. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we can say for sure Buddha was not born enlightened, but he became enlightened. Krishna was not born. He was not born human and became enlightened. Krishna was born enlightened. Was representing enlightenment. He is not somebody who was ever dark to become bright. Krishna always had the clarity. He
Mm-hmm.
always had the awareness. So it's difficult to say the same about the Jesus in the sense, because if Jesus is the God time he was born or even before he was born, it's hard to say. But there are surely certain stories that can be interpreted that way, because the story of him being baptized as by John was a way to make him stronger. The time when he went to the desert and he had to
Yes.
confront all the devils and other things was probably his tapas. We could always extrapolate all this and interpret. But whether he became enlightened or was born enlightenment, I don't want to make a comment. What I would like to say is he represents enlightenment. He's one of the
Yeah.
representatives of enlightened state.
So there are many different possibilities: born enlightenment, not being born enlightenment, and enlightenment, and then being enlightenment. So many possibilities, dear friends. We can do it in this life or next life. We'll see how will end up
Absolutely.
for us.
Absolutely. And I think that is another important thing that people should remember is that the state of enlightenment is not necessarily going to appear the same way for everybody.
Yes.
It will manifest differently for different people and in different ways, in different moments of their lives, and things like that. So, we should not search for a common denominator here that, oh, he or she was like this, so we have to become like that.
Yeah.
This will be a problem.
Hmm.
This will be a problem. We have a great sage called Ramakrishna in India who lived in the uh, late 1800s and early part of the 1900s, very early, very little. Um, he was enlightened, but he was some many people thought he was a madman because he was
Hmm.
very dramatic, and some people would even say crazy.
Yes.
Whereas somebody else like Sai Baba, who came from Shirdi, is another very enlightened gentleman. He was very calm. He was very quiet. He was not excited or agitated, like, or he was not agitated is not the word. He was not very um, so-called eccentric like Ramakrishna.
Okay.
Ramakrishna was a bit more eccentric, whereas Sai Baba was much more calm and much more quiet. So both were enlightened. Now, so that's why I'm saying it comes in different forms. It's not coming in the same form for everybody.
So could you tell us something more about does enlightenment mean in a way, as you mentioned before, stepping into another world, opening the doors and have a passport, or to go into another world?
Yeah, it's almost like you see the same world with a new pair of glasses.
Yes.
Metaphorically, glasses not just with eyes but also ears, nose, everything. And this is a new pair of glasses, which I'm very
Oh,
happy to have.
fantastic.
Because I tell you, the corona has made my power even worse because I'm watching, doing all the classes online, and my
Yeah.
eyes have suffered because of that. But coming back, what it means is like, take for example, we go to the zoo and watch the animals in a cage. Now, from our perception, the animals are in a cage and we are free. But when you look at it from the animal's perspective, maybe we appear to be in the cage because the bars are the same. So,
Yes.
enlightenment is not that you are jumping off on a spaceship to another planet. It's staying here, but looking at things differently.
Mm-hmm.
That's why in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives so many beautiful ways to describe the experience of an enlightened person. He starts giving different things. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushtasthita prajnastaduchyate. Somebody who does not have temptation like normal people have. It doesn't mean that they are not eating, but they're not eating for temptation, they're eating for nourishment. It's a different thing. Somebody who is just satisfied to stay with the light in the heart, that person is enlightened. Somebody who is not disturbed by suffering, dukkeshu anud vigna manaha, somebody who is not disturbed by suffering, somebody who is not craving for pleasure, sukheshu vigataspraha, vita raga bhaya krodha, three things they don't suffer from: desire, fear, or anger. So an enlightened person will not be angry, will not have fear, will not get uh, uh, and desires. Raga is desire. Somebody who does not get swayed by something that is auspicious or inauspicious, like success or failure. Somebody who doesn't have aversion or anger. So there are certain qualities that will start to manifest in their action. And you know from these that a person is enlightened or not. Certainly, an enlightened person will not crave for a Ferrari or a Lamborghini because they don't care about it. For them, they just need to travel from one place to the other. It doesn't matter what they are traveling on, whether they are traveling on a car or a bus or a camel or a horse, it doesn't matter as far as if they're not attached to the means of travel, to the means of nourishment. For them, they are detached from all this. So it's the perception changes. The perception changes. The way we behave with each other changes. We don't see differences between man or woman, not just man or woman, between humans or animals. We see everything as a spiritual being, even the plants. We see that as a spiritual being.
Yes. Yeah. So could be also that we can say that enlightenment is when we somehow go beyond Maya, beyond delusion. And if this is so, we see then the truth and we are more wise, as you said before. And if this is so, then I am thinking again as a normal human being, and I'm saying, oh my God, how hard then it is even more to be in this world, to see all the rest, where we are as humanity.
Yes, certainly enlightenment is lack of Maya, absence of Maya. Because then we remove the delusion, which is the
Yes.
cloak. It removes the cloak of illusion, of delusion, of false identification, etc. So that's why one of the words also to describe this is called nirvana. That means absence of all veils, absence of all the veils. It's basically, in a certain way, it means to be naked. Naked does not mean literal. It means you are wearing no mask.
Yeah.
All the egos that we have are masks that we wear. To be truly ourselves, that is nirvana, where there is nothing that is covering. It's just our pure light that is revealed. There's no covering. It's almost like the veil that surrounds the light is removed. Patanjali uses a beautiful word, tataha kshiyate prakasha avaranam. The veil that surrounds the light is removed.
It's beautiful, very beautiful. I'm looking forward, and I'm looking forward for all the rest of our friends here to experience this. But it's really sounds unreachable, yeah, like that. Very, very, very difficult.
See, if we start saying that it sounds unreachable, it will be unreachable. Whereas if we start taking small steps, reach it. Like when you look at, for example, the Himalayas, when you look at it, it's so big to climb. So if we already decide, oh, you know
We,
what, I cannot climb this, then we won't be able to
I give
climb.
up.
Whereas if we say, okay, let's start with small steps, and we start doing small steps, take rest a little bit, then do some more steps, take rest a little bit, do some more steps. At some point, we will reach there. When
Yeah.
we don't know, but at some point we will. So the important thing is to take small steps, not to take extreme steps.
Mhm. But is it in, let's say, is it um, because sometimes maybe can be also that we are just want to get rid of this karma and go into another world with that passport because it's so hard here. So is this some sort of a baggage also that we need to get lost, to need to put down? Yeah.
Of course, it's the story I tell everybody. For example, when you're climbing the Himalayas, you have a backpack. In this backpack, you are loading only what is essential. You take some water, you take some essential warm clothing, you take some medicines, for example, in case you are falling, there's a first aid kit or something like that. You have a helmet, you have some glasses to protect yourself from the sun, you have some gloves. You take the essentials. Now, as you are climbing the Himalayas, let's say there are some little shops on the way where they are selling some Coca Cola or some cookies or some biscuits or things
Yes.
like that. You start loading that bag. What happens? The bag becomes very heavy. You can't climb forward.
Mm-hmm.
The same way, in the path towards enlightenment, if we accumulate more and more bad karma, the bag becomes heavy. We cannot. That's why every tradition which talks about this, they are saying, reduce the karma. It's what Patanjali also says. You have to reduce the karmic baggage so that you become more light. You
Yeah.
cannot run away from your life and you think you are escaping into an ashram and this ashram will make you enlightened.
Yes.
It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have
Yes.
to reduce your karmic baggage. There are so many people in this world who run to ashrams and retreats and resorts which promise them enlightenment because they think that they can run away from their problems and be enlightened. That is never going to happen.
We need to live
That
life.
happen.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Mm-hmm.
have to live life. You have to live life. When you take all these examples of these people, whether it's Buddha or Jesus or Swami Devedanta Deshika or Mirabai, a lady,
Yeah.
Andal, lady, they never went to ashrams. They lived their life.
Yeah.
They lived their life in their life. They didn't escape their life to
Mm-hmm.
search for enlightenment. And that is the problem today. We have a lot of ashrams that promise people, seduce them, and it creates a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm. So let's have a last question. Or if someone wants to ask something, we can still have a few minutes for your questions. But my last question would be, Kaustubha, if someone, if someone miraculously would nevertheless got enlightened, what would you then recommend
If
him
they are
or her?
enlightened, what else do I need to recommend? I would recommend nothing because they don't
Like
need
how,
anything.
like how to live then in this earth?
They continue their life.
Okay.
I mean, just because somebody is enlightened, it doesn't mean the end of the life. Enlightenment is not a destination, it's a
Mhm.
milestone.
Oh, it's a milestone. Okay.
So you then continue to act with that enlightened Buddha. Once he became enlightenment, he just did not say, "Okay, bye, guys," and pop off into another world. He propagated, he taught, he aided other people in their
Yeah.
journey of
Good.
enlightenment. He traveled many parts of India. He was not static, but he was not like a rocket, going back and forth. He was moving slowly from one place to another to teach, to spread his path, his experience. So he would facilitate others to gain enlightenment. So enlightenment is not a destination. It's not like a
Mm-hmm.
buy a bus ticket or something like that.
Yes. Okay.
You know?
So, okay, great. With that, we will slowly close, yeah, and we will ask Kaus to chant for us in the end. And but before we go, I would like to wish you a happy Easter.
Yes, happy
And
Easter to everybody.
sorry.
Happy Easter to everybody.
Exactly. Happy Easter to everybody, and enjoy the days ahead and have some spiritual practices. And then stay tuned with our information. We will let you know when the next interview will be on with fantastic topics as always. So thank you very much, Dr. Kausthub Desikachar. Thank you very much, all our friends from all around the world. And now, please, if you can chant for us the last chant.
This chant I will do for the benefit of all of you, but I don't know if I will be able to sleep after this. But this chant is
Oh my
describing,
gosh.
is trying to describe the experience of the feeling somebody may have when they discover the divine.
Oh, great.
It's a very powerful chant. Etat samagayan naste havo Ahamannam 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 Ahamannado Hamannado Hamannadaham Ahagashlokkakrit Dahagashlokkakrit Dahagashlokkakrit Ahamasmi prathamaja preta Orvandevedhyo Amritasya Bhaye यो मादगाति स इदेव मा मदन्त माद्मे अहं विश्वं भुवनमभ्यभवा सुवर्ण ज्योति या एवं वेदा निषत् हरे शान्ति 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 Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. As I was chanting, one more verse or one more explanation or metaphor came, which is given in one of the Upanishads, and my grandfather is quoting it in his commentary to the Yoga Sutra towards the end, when he says that it's this highest state is such that the one who has no fingers, no hands, is making the jewels. He's sewing the pearls together. And the one who has no neck, he is wearing it. And the one who has no tongue or mouth, he is describing it. So imagine this.
Wow.
So reflect about it. It's a very, very fascinating concept. It's a very, very fascinating concept.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kaustubha. Thank you very much, dear friends.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Happy Easter to everybody and to you, Katja.
Happy Easter to all of you. Thank you.